Hello, I'm Kathleen Magladry. Today we are delighted to meet with 4 of Fairlawn's Embrace Action partners. Our guests represent agencies that work on the front lines with vulnerable people in our city. In keeping with today's theme of giving hope in dark times, our panelists will tell us of some of their challenges during the pandemic and also some moments of hope. I'd like to introduce our guests. Kelly White is the Overdose Prevention Site Coordinator for Street Health. Amanda Hickey is the Program Coordinator for Young Adults with Intellectual Disabilities for L'Arche, Toronto. Kirsten Cooney is Fundraising Coordinator for the Red Door Family Shelter. Ertha Downey is Program Supervisor for Roehampton residents. Welcome all. So what did your organization find was the biggest challenge in offering critical support to your vulnerable community during the pandemic? Let's start with you, Kirsten.
Thanks so much, Kathleen, and thank you to the whole community for having us here today. You know, reading this, question, thinking about it, the biggest challenge, there were really so many challenges, and it's sort of hard to pick one. I would say for us, I think our biggest challenge was managing how do you social distance in a situation of communal living? And we operate, as your community knows, we operate 2 shelters. So we have a family shelter and a violence against women shelter. And our violence against women shelter is, there is a lot of communal living there. Sometimes we have women share a room. There might be a mom with 1 child and another mom with 1 or 2. And so they share a room and share a bathroom. So the lack of ability to do this was a huge challenge for us. I'd say, and I'm going to talk more about that in sort of the next question, sort of how we adapted to that. But there was a lot of adapting needing to be done. And I'd say, reflecting on this, another challenge for us, I think, was we see so much strength and healing from our residents when they come to us from community and that sense of community. And because of social distancing and not being able to gather together and having that sense of community, including like say dining together, we had to, the tables were separated. So where moms would all, gather at the table and sit and exchange stories about parenting and challenges that they had, experiences they had, and learning from each other and leaning on each other, having to be 6 feet apart, having plexiglass barricades between you at mealtime really took away from that. As I said, we really see strength and healing from community. And I'd say that was a really big challenge for our residents and also for our staff in trying to keep that sense of community while also being safe.
Amanda?
I can actually echo Kirsten's comments because at L'Arche, we have our residential homes where people live together, and it's very much community. And then immediately masks go on, separating the assistants from the core members. And they're like all these subtle separations because of the social distancing. And then their worlds also got smaller. So their performing arts program, Soul Express, that they used to go to, had to close. Their volunteer opportunities had to close, their day programs, and then they were all together within the home. And so their worlds, which they're very active and out in the community, immediately just got really small. And then also for the core members, their physical environment changed too. And trying to understand that when you're someone on the spectrum is really difficult. And also for people that succeed because they have routine, having their routine virtually change overnight, and having that dinner, like Kirsten said, that the conversation and that joy at the dinner time, and then all of a sudden having it to separate. And also core members' roles in the kitchen had to change because of the rules from the ministry. And then so everything has changed. And then for our Soul Express program, it went virtual, but not everyone has those tools. Not everyone has the access to the internet. And then for the TIFS participants, some of them live in challenging environments, and then for them, being at home in a challenging environment just magnified all the issues. So those are some of the biggest challenges that we've seen.
Ertha?
Hi. So, I really would agree with both Kirsten and Amanda. One of the biggest challenges for us was around the social isolation that our participants and residents were experiencing. And we're working with people who have developed street families over the time that they've been living outside, and having to distance from those people has been very, very difficult. Our programming had to change and then sometimes completely stop. That was difficult. The groups that we were holding, that we would normally hold inside of shelter spaces, had to stop. Access to your community resources, your workers, your harm reduction workers, your OW workers, all of those people that you used to have access to also was very, very different. So we incorporated a lot of changes to adapt ourselves to what was happening for the clients and the residents that we're dealing with. But it was very, very difficult to work with people who you're used to being social with and dropping in often just to sit in your office and talk. And now you're right, you have this plexiglass up, you're wearing masks, you can't see, visual cues on people's faces, you can't see a lot of the expressions that you would use to just normally express joy and agreement or support for people. We weren't able to do any of that. For people that did have challenges hearing, wearing a mask was very difficult because we were having a very great deal of difficulty communicating with people. So, I think we're all in the same boat with how we were trying to adapt through this pandemic, but it has been very, very challenging to deal with the social isolation. The opioid crisis made it very difficult for us to support a lot of our residents as well. People didn't have access to the same services that they needed. So, we checked in on people more. We did a lot more work one-on-one than we were normally doing in regular times. But I think the biggest challenge for us has been not being able to access the social aspects of the work that we do with people.
Thanks. Okay. Kelly?
Hi there. I'd just first like to say that I'm so grateful to be invited to speak to you today. I think among all of our community partners, we can say that Fairlawn United Church has just been so unique in your efforts to understand the issue of overdose and to spread the word about what's happening. Essentially from day one, running an overdose prevention site has had a host of challenges. As your congregation is aware of, I think we have actually been running without provincial funding since the spring of 2019. So when the pandemic hit, we were sort of taken aback. We had to think about how to offer the services we offer in a safe way. So we had to secure our own PPE. We had to develop protocols to ensure that we could use oxygen safely, for example, all of those things. And I think just to echo what everybody else has said, just the intensity of life on the streets right now is hard to even describe. Many of our clients who have been living in the downtown east for years and years felt unsafe in the shelter system, and fair enough. Many of them moved to tents or encampments in various parts of the city. And then eventually many of them moved to various hotel programs and things like that. So essentially the community where all of the services that people relied upon was located was suddenly sort of, people were just no longer there. So it was really difficult for us, just sort of wondering where people were, people we used to see every day, people who, may have had plans to follow up with things with us, that sort of thing. So that was a big challenge, of course. And if you think about just sort of what it must be like to be a homeless person right now, beyond the social services that people rely upon, there's just like the simple lack of places to be, right? So libraries, McDonald's, those sorts of things that just sort of provided like a maybe slight safety net were just suddenly no longer available. So we actually managed to just close the service for one day and do a lot of planning and a lot of outreach, and then we reopened one day later. Yes, but since then it's certainly been a challenge to, yeah, I think just sort of to echo what other people said, when the key of social work is relationship building, certainly the key of providing services to people who use drugs is non-judgment, sort of letting go of the stigma around drug use and really meeting people face to face. And when the people who you've learned to trust are suddenly wearing huge masks and gowns, and there's just this medicalized atmosphere that was never there before, just the character of the service, I think, was forced to change a little bit. And that was really unfortunate.
Thanks. Have you adjusted to the challenges? Have they eased? Or have new difficulties arisen? Let's start with you again, Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely. We have adjusted to the challenges like we always do, simply because we have this commitment to a community now, and to abandon them would just be unconscionable for us. So I think we're fortunate in that all of the supervised consumption sites across the city, funded or not, are in regular contact with one another. So we were able to do things like share policies and share resources and things like that. Of course, without community partners, we couldn't be open today. So again, like, so much gratitude for your support. Yeah, I mean, I think for our clients, things have probably not gotten easier, unfortunately. The drug supply is probably more toxic than it's ever been. We're finding that people who are opioid dependent and seeking opioids on the street are just not able to access what they need. So something like, I think over 70% of the drugs sold as fentanyl in the city have been shown to have benzodiazepines in them, which basically makes for a very challenging overdose situation. I do think we're lucky to have services like drug checking. It's been wonderful to see just sort of grassroots support from random people in Toronto, you know, like watching people organize together to support encampments, for example, has been incredible. And I am sort of hopeful that these issues that have always been percolating have maybe been brought to the forefront of people's attention during the pandemic. When you think about all the things we're being asked to do, like stay home and wash our hands, and if you think about what it's like to be a homeless person in this context, it's an impossible ask, really. So I think, yeah, just simply the raising of awareness has given me hope.
Kirsten?
Yeah, Kathleen, we certainly have been able to adapt. It's been challenging, but as social service organizations, that's our, it's our responsibility sort of to adapt no matter what challenges are thrown at us. But this pandemic certainly has been a doozy, to say the least. We talked about, I talked about the difficulties in social distancing at our Violence Against Women shelter, but we know that, there were lots of issues with domestic violence. And so we had to continue to serve these women and their children. And so in conjunction with the ministry, we introduced a hotel program. And this was a place where, upon doing an intake, so a woman and her children would would be admitted to the hotel, and they would self-isolate there for 2 weeks before then coming to the shelter. That presented a whole bunch of challenges. We had to have the hotel staffed then 24 hours a day. We didn't have any more staff to do that, so we had to redeploy a lot of our staff, and to make sure also that we were trying to provide the services that we could again. So and realizing how challenging it was. So you've got a situation, where we had a mom come, we'll call her Gloria, and she came to the hotel. She had had the courage to leave her abusive situation. She had a brand new baby and a toddler. And then she is now in this hotel room with a baby and a toddler by herself for 2 weeks. And it is super challenging. So our workers trying to provide that support, doing the casework, doing the trauma counseling, access to healthcare, and the other needs. So it was extremely challenging, but we know that it was working. And I think that in some cases there was some women, I think, were afraid to leave and hesitant to leave because they didn't know where to go. And we also had a very sort of heartbreaking and heartwarming story. We had there was a mom and 3 kids, and they were in a park. And there was another woman that was there that happened to be a former resident of Red Door. And she saw this woman in the park, and it was the second day she'd seen her. And she looked like she was in real need of help. And she went up to her and she said, you know, she introduced herself and said, "Are you in need of somewhere to go? I have been there myself, and you look like you need help." And she said, yes. And she said, I was kicked, my partner kicked me out with my kids, and myself and one of my kids have COVID, and we don't know where to go. And we were able to give them help them go to one of the respite centers where they could go and get care. And then we were able to accept them at the hotel program, where they were able to isolate and get the care they needed, and then go to the shelter. So having that, as challenging as it has been helpful, and it's made us realize that we're able to still keep serving people while keeping all of our residents safe. So it's been a wonderful thing, but as I said, extremely challenging for both residents and staff.
Amanda?
Yeah, sorry, I was just taken with that story. It's amazing work that you guys are doing. So we were able to develop and implement a new day program because our core members were unable to leave the home, as I spoke to before. And so we brought a new day program into the home. So that person was able to create activities. And actually, one of our core members sewed her very first dress through that program. And she's so proud of this dress. So we were able to create new opportunities for our core members by bringing in the program. And then we were able to, Soul Express had launched a very successful virtual program, and we were able, and what made it actually really unique and special is that it's now people from all over Canada that have been able to join for the program. So the challenging part is that when we're virtual, we're not charging the same amounts, and we're also, so all of these things cost money. And so we really appreciate all the support that we've received for Fairlawn for these things, because they allow us to continue and maintain that connection with people. As we're talking about, it's so important that in this time of social distancing that we're still being brought together. And so within our TIFS program for the young adults, we're able to have Zoom calls, we have Kahoot challenges, and we've done all these different aspects so that we can be involved and have almost daily check-ins with them to see how they are. Also for the individuals that are having that home environment isn't optimal for them, that they have that place to go and just talk. You can't really vent to the people that you're living with about your stresses, but we've been able to be that soft landing place for people. And the other thing is that for our residents, not being able to see their family has been really difficult, because families normally would come in and join us for dinner, and now families have to be through a glass window, and now it's just virtual video calls and phone calls. But there's nothing that can replace a hug or a hand being held, somebody holding your hand. And that has been really challenging for our core members, and also for our assistants, because we have a lot of assistants that come from abroad and haven't been able to go home because of travel bans, because it's not safe for them. So that's been also really challenging for our assistants too. But we keep on trying to strengthen and develop our relationships to be stronger with one another. sometimes we succeed. And yeah.
Thanks. Ertha?
Hi, sorry. We've been very fortunate in that we've been able to shift and bring a lot of the resources on site that our residents are needing. So we do have access to virtual case managers through OW. We are very fortunate to have inner city health associates on site. So we have access to a nurse practitioner, doctors, psychiatrists, as well as nurses 5 days a week. We have NAMI-RES on site. We have MDOT on site. We do have employment specialists on site. The works comes daily with the van to our site. And we do have counselors on site as well. So we've been able to bring a lot of the resources that we were not able to have our participants actually accessing in the community right here. We've been fortunate in that we've been able to address our COVID needs by having surveillance swabbing done on site through Sunnybrook. As far as programming goes, that's been touch and go depending on how the restrictions are, but we have shifted to smaller group activities. We've been able to, up until recently, maintain our movie nights. So we just do it in multiple showings and have much smaller groups being able to socialize and watch a movie together. We are having more one-on-one meetings with our residents, more check-ins, more wellness checks. So a lot of that stuff we've been able to shift it, but it has been challenging because people do like to venture out and do more stuff outside. But one of the things that we have noticed as a positive through some of this shifting is that people are getting to know us a little bit better, and so we're getting a lot more work done than we were getting done when we first opened. And I think we'll go into that probably a little bit into question 3, some of the origins of our programming and how things have shifted here. But we have shifted, but we've brought a lot of resources on site so that our residents are supported well in the Roehampton residents.
Despite the public health and economic toll of COVID-19, we've seen stories in the news that have given us hope. For example, increased focus on economic injustice, on racial inequality. What moments in your work have made you hopeful? Let's start with you, Ertha.
Well, I think one of the really hopeful moments for me coming here, I came to Roehampton on August 10th. And on August 15th, we had a community event that was quite well viewed in the news. And one of the things, sorry, why is my phone ringing? Sorry, there we go. But since then, we've had incredible support from this community. Midtown has really come up to support the work that we're doing. Our community liaison committee meets monthly and has supported us throughout this pandemic at this point, giving us lots of donations and raising awareness in terms of the work that we do. I think that the difficulty and the social determinants of health and the health risks of living in congregate settings, I think all of that has come full circle and become front and center during this pandemic. I think people have realized the importance of housing. I think people have realized and awareness has been raised on how difficult people's lives are when they're living outside, and the importance for people to have the health supports, to be able to have safety, to be able to isolate in a place where they can do that. Many of the people that we work with were never able to do that. We did have a lot of people coming into the Roehampton from the encampments. They were not happy to be here when they initially arrived because in many cases, it wasn't their choice to come inside. But what we did find was that after people had settled in here and they were able to meet the staff and learned a little bit about what the work we were doing, people did settle down and they were happy to be here. So I think there have been a lot of positives that have come out of this. Namely, the opioid crisis that we are working with has taken so many lives in 2020. and more lives than we have ever seen in the shelter system. And I think that has also become known to the general public, which is outside of the work that we normally do, because we do see these losses, we feel these losses, we experience the loss of the lives of the people that we work with. But I think the general population has learned a little bit about what it is like to do this work and how difficult it is for people who are living outside or living in the shelter system, because we don't have adequate housing, we don't have enough housing. We need to build more housing, and this is how we're going to continue to keep people as safe as they need to be, because right now we are seeing the impacts of that.
Kelly?
Yeah, thanks for that, Ertha. I certainly hope that I certainly hope that we can do something about the housing situation in this city. I think for me, one of the most exciting things to come out of the pandemic. So I guess just a little bit of context. So I'm sure, as most of you know, we're living through an overdose crisis in Canada. Since June of 2016, over 17,000 people have died. And we know, like I mentioned a little bit before, that primarily the deaths are being driven by illicit opioids, so street drugs, basically. However, one of the most exciting programs at Street Health to happen in a while has just started. So we were able to get some funding through the federal government, and essentially running an overdose prevention site. You know, you're watching people inject toxic drugs all day. You know they're toxic. You know that overdoses are probably going to happen. But with this program, we have a nurse practitioner who is able to prescribe pharmaceutical drugs, so drugs of a known potency, a known strength. And at this point, I think we have almost 30 people just at our agency on this program. And the difference is like night and day. So people who previously were spending all day long hustling to get money to buy drugs, sex work, or just various aspects of the illicit economy, suddenly have all of this time on their hands, and they're using this time to do things like find housing, to like finally reconnect with their children, to find work in some cases. Like, it's just been remarkable. And yeah, I really hope that we can continue to do this. Like many programs right now, it's a very short-term amount of funding, but I'm hopeful that when the outcomes of this program become clear, that it'll be extended. I can think of one client in particular. I'll just call her S. And so S is a 23-year-old trans woman who, up until I think last summer, had been living in a tent. She's now living in a hotel program. She's being prescribed the drugs that she's dependent on. So she finally is able to get a bit of a handle on what that means, like what, transitioning to treatment might look like, all those things. But she's working now. She's looking for an apartment. And the difference is just like night and day. And to see people who you've built relationships with over the years, a lot of people have deteriorated. That's absolutely true. But to see cases like this, like it's just so heartwarming, and like, yeah, this is why we do this work.
Thanks. Amanda?
I think COVID has really taught us the value of authentic connections with one another, and the importance of community, and our desire for relationships and community. Because when it's taken away, you realize what you're missing. And so it has amazed me within our virtual programs how a community has developed over the course of these courses that we're doing online with one another. Like the participants celebrate when they see each other, and we for our homebound cooking challenge for our families, we do this virtual cooking show, and then they send in the pictures and we share the pictures. And parents are saying, this is the first time that my child is actually cooking, and I didn't think that they could do this. And one of our participants in the program lives with another individual with intellectual disabilities, and we were making banana bread, and the parents were saying, like, we were so nervous We were just trusting that they could do this on their own. And they were like, should we have a PSW come in and check on them? And they did perfect. And the families, like, this opportunity that we wouldn't have had with these individuals because they would have been at work placements or in volunteer positions. They have this time now to be like learning these new skills, and they're developing these skills and amazing their parents. And the other thing is I think it's our volunteers, because they haven't been able to come into the homes, have really stepped up in other ways. We had Uber, we had a large Uber for us, assistants that would go into the home. You know, it's unsafe to take the TTC, or it's so that they were driving us. It's like they would come to our house and be all masked and then drive us to the homes. Large Toronto has not had one case, everyone knock on wood, of COVID in our homes. And I think that that's also due to the hard work of our volunteers that have stepped up to ensure that our homes are as safe as possible. And then we have had one of our volunteers make masks, and then she was selling the masks online and donating the money back to the homes so that the core members have recreational activities within the home. And so although we're apart, there have been ways that people have been brought back together. And also, it's really helpful, the fact that we've had these grants from from you and from Large Toronto and Large Canada that have allowed us to continue, because a lot of day programs for individuals with intellectual disabilities, unfortunately, when COVID is over, those programs won't be there. And people are going to have places of like, what do I do now? And yet we're able to continue our programs, and we're able to still ensure that people are, when they're at home, they're still active, they're still learning, and they're still growing. And that's within our homes and within our day programs. And yeah, and we've been able to do some really exciting things. But you know, it's always a continual, the donations, I cannot say are actually really what are, I think, what are saving us, and also reminding us that we are not alone in this, that we are a community.
Thank you. Kirsten.
Thanks, Kathleen. I think, you know, one of the, you know, we talked about sort of the bright moments despite all of the challenges. And I think that, you know, a broad picture as a society and as a city, especially, you know, talking about Toronto, we have become more compassionate towards others. And I think that the care and compassion that has been shown by our community is overwhelming, and it is what has sustained us and allowing us to continue to do the work. You know, there's been some really beautiful moments, and some in all these dark times, there have been some really special moments. And one of the things that was great was, you know, our focus is, we have a huge focus on children's programs, as you know, and Fairlawn has been a big supporter of our children's programs for a long time. Over 2/3 of our residents are kids. So, you know, with inability again to gather, and how do we, you know, how do we have our kids come together, and how do we support our kids and provide entertainment and enrichment for them? And it's been challenging, and so many have been at home. And then we put together these amazing kits for families. So with board games and crafts, and this one little boy, Abraham, had said it was his best. He had like the best weekend. He had said, I had the best weekend, and we played Battleship, and we drew, and he had all this time with his mom and his siblings, and he was having the best time. Like, he had a great weekend. And I think that there was just those special moments where we were really touched to hear that. I'd say one of our brightest stories was from the holidays. And, you know, Fairlawn has been a huge supporter of ours, especially around the holidays. And our holiday campaign this year, we had such an outpouring of support from donations of toys, grocery gift cards, winter accessories for our families, that we were able to provide more than normal to families. So we support our residents as well as our outreach clients, which are families who've moved out of the shelter recently. And we were able to go back even a few years and help some more families. And we had a few, clients tell us how much it meant to them. And there was a client in particular of ours, Joanna, and she is a single mom of 4 kids. She had lost her job due to COVID, and said that back in October, after she had lost her job and she was trying to think of what she was going to do for the holidays for her kids. And she's worked really hard over the last couple of years and got back on her feet and built a new life for herself and her children after a lot of trauma. And she didn't know what she was going to do for the holidays. And she said that having the support of the community and being able to provide her with toys and groceries and grocery gift cards and mittens and hats for her kids, said it was the most magical holiday for her. And that's because of our community of support. So I think that more than ever, we realize how truly blessed we are to have amazing community partners, such as Fairlawn, and also so many new people that are new to the Red Door and that are learning for the first time about us and the work that ourselves and all of the organizations that are here today do, and for caring for those who need it and showing compassion for others, which is, I hope, something that we all take out of this pandemic, and that will carry us all forward.
Thank you all so much for sharing your stories of challenge and also hope with us. Thank you.
Kathleen, can I share a couple of stories of 2 of our residents?
Go ahead.
We had a gentleman, we'll call him H, who came into the shelter from family breakdown. He had never been homeless. Actually expressed to his counselor when they met for the first time that he thought he was going to die here, because it was so traumatizing for him to be in a situation where he felt so vulnerable and he felt that none of the comforts and supports that he had been used to were available to him. He worked diligently with the housing worker. He came in September. We housed him in early January. And he said the feelings that he received from having the key to be able to go into his home and feel safe in his home, he felt that the Roehampton had saved his life. And he was so thankful for the community as well. He made it a point of thanking the counselor because he saw so many donations coming in through the month of December. He had no idea that people cared this much about facilities such as ours. A second man that we had worked with, and we housed him in December, he was 65 years old. We'll call him R. He had been homeless off and on for various parts of his life, but then consistently experiencing homelessness from 2011. Spent several years living at Seton House, several nights living on the street, very cold, very vulnerable, very afraid. But we housed him, and he felt, again, that he thought that he was going to die in the shelter system as well. And I think for a lot of especially older people that we're working with, that is a real fear. So the importance of them finding housing is incredible for their well-being, for the way that they feel. The gentleman R expressed that because he was able to finally be housed, he was really looking forward to the pandemic being over so that he could have people over to watch the football game with him, which he had never thought he was going to be in a situation to do. And that was a really telling moment for us, that was something he was looking forward to, this pandemic ending, so that he could get his life started again.
Thank you for telling
You're
those
welcome.
stories. Thanks. Thank you all so much for sharing your stories of challenge and of hope with us today. Your donations to the Embrace Action Fund help make the vital work of these agencies possible. So thank you for your support and for being part of giving hope in dark times. Thank you.